How Elite Minds Do Hard Things Every Single Day, published by the Growth Mind Audiobook. Introduction. Right now, there is something in your life that you already know you need to do. You know the conversation you need to have. You know the work you need to finish. You know the habit you need to build, the distraction you need to eliminate, the goal you need to pursue, or the decision you have been postponing. You don't need another explanation. You need to move. That is where this journey begins. Not with motivation, not with confidence, not with the perfect plan, with action. Because the difference between an ordinary life and an extraordinary one is often decided in moments that look completely ordinary. It is decided when the alarm rings and you get up anyway, when the work becomes frustrating and you stay with it, when your phone calls for your attention and you put it down, when nobody is watching and you keep your promise. These moments don't look impressive from the outside, but they are building you. Every time you choose the difficult action over the comfortable escape, you strengthen a part of yourself. Every time you finish what you started, you increase your self-respect. Every time you return after failure, you become more difficult to defeat. This is how elite minds are built. Not through one dramatic transformation, through repeated decisions. The people you admire for their discipline did not wake up one morning with unlimited willpower. They trained it. They practiced starting when they didn't feel ready. They practiced continuing when the excitement disappeared. They learned to tolerate boredom, uncertainty, rejection, and temporary failure without immediately running back to comfort. You can train the same way, but this audiobook will not ask you to become perfect. It will ask you to become dependable. When you say you will do something, do it. When resistance appears, move anyway. When you fail, study the failure. When you lose momentum, return quickly. When the easy option appears, remember what you are building. And when the work becomes difficult, stop treating difficulty as a signal to retreat. Treat it as your next opportunity to practice becoming stronger. From this moment forward, don't wait for the version of you who feels ready. Build the version of you who acts without permission. Choose one hard thing. Start before you're comfortable. Stay when it's difficult. Finish what you can. Then wake up tomorrow and do it again. Because one hard decision can change your direction, but thousands of hard decisions can change your identity, and that identity begins with what you choose to do next. Chapter 1. Kill the excuse before it kills your momentum. The hardest part of doing something difficult is often not the difficulty itself. It is the conversation that happens inside your head before you begin. You wake up knowing what needs to be done, and almost immediately, your mind starts offering alternatives. You could start later. You could wait until you have more energy. You could prepare a little longer. You could handle it tomorrow when you are in a better mood. The excuses rarely sound foolish. That is what makes them dangerous. They sound reasonable enough to believe, but there is a cost to believing them. Every time you tell yourself you will do something and then choose not to, you teach yourself a lesson. You teach your mind that your decisions are negotiable. You tell yourself that discomfort has more authority than commitment. Eventually, this becomes a pattern. You make plans in the evening and abandon them in the morning. You set goals on Monday and forget them by Friday. You promise yourself that this time will be different, but when the moment arrives, the same old escape route is waiting. The problem is not that you are incapable of discipline. The problem is that you have practiced negotiation more often than action. Elite minds approach that moment differently. They don't wait for every excuse to disappear. They don't waste valuable energy trying to convince themselves that difficult work will suddenly become enjoyable. They recognize the hesitation, acknowledge it, and move. That is the first skill you need to develop. Acting before your mind has finished making its case against you. The next time you catch yourself thinking, "I'll do it later," stop. Don't argue with the thought. Don't spend 10 minutes trying to become inspired. Simply identify the action that needs to happen and take the smallest physical step toward it. If you need to exercise, put on your shoes. If you need to write, open the document. If you need to study, put the book in front of you. If you need to make the call, pick up the phone. If you need to clean the room, move the first object. The objective is not to complete everything in one burst of heroic effort. The objective is to break the pattern of hesitation. Action creates evidence. When you begin despite resistance, you prove that your feelings do not control your decisions. When you take one step, the next step becomes easier to see. Momentum begins where negotiation ends. Try this today. Think of one task you have been postponing. Choose something meaningful but manageable. Give yourself 5 minutes, not an entire day, not an impossible promise, just 5 focused minutes of movement. During those 5 minutes, you are not allowed to ask whether you feel motivated. You are not allowed to predict how difficult the entire task will be. You only have one responsibility: begin. You may discover that the task was never as impossible as your imagination made it seem, or perhaps it really is difficult. Either way, you have already won something important. You have broken the habit of waiting for permission from your emotions. But there is another lesson here. Starting is not the same as finishing. Anyone can begin when excitement is high. The real test arrives when the novelty disappears, when the work becomes repetitive, and when the voice in your head returns with a new argument. You've done enough. You can stop now. That is where the next level of mental strength begins. First, you must learn to stop negotiating with the excuse. Then, you must learn what to do when discomfort becomes the excuse. Because the moment you stop running from the beginning, you will eventually meet the part of the journey that makes people quit. And when that moment comes, you will have a choice. You can return to comfort, or you can stay long enough to discover what you are actually capable of. Chapter 2. Do the hardest thing before you feel like quitting. Starting is powerful, but starting is not the finish line. In fact, for many people, beginning is the easiest part. The first day feels exciting. The new plan feels fresh. You can imagine the person you are going to become, and that image gives you energy. But eventually, the excitement fades. The work becomes repetitive. Progress slows. The results you expected do not arrive as quickly as you hoped. Then, almost without warning, the question appears in your mind: why am I still doing this? That question is where many people turn back. They don't quit because the goal suddenly stopped mattering. They quit because the process stopped feeling good. This is one of the most important differences between people who occasionally achieve difficult things and those who consistently do them. Elite minds understand that motivation is a visitor. It arrives, creates energy, and eventually leaves. If your progress depends entirely on how inspired you feel, your progress will always be unstable. You need another skill. You need to learn how to stay when the emotional reward disappears. Think about the last time you wanted to quit something important. Maybe you were exercising and your body felt heavy. Maybe you were studying and nothing seemed to make sense. Maybe you were building a project and the results were nowhere to be seen. In that moment, your mind probably offered a convincing explanation for stopping. You were tired. You had done enough. You could continue tomorrow. Sometimes those reasons are legitimate. Rest matters. Recovery matters. There are moments when stopping is intelligent. Mental toughness does not mean ignoring pain, destroying your health, or refusing to change direction when something is genuinely wrong. But there is a difference between needing to stop and simply wanting to escape discomfort. Your job is to learn the difference. The next time you feel the urge to quit, don't immediately obey it. Pause. Give yourself a moment to separate the emotion from the decision. Ask yourself one direct question: am I truly finished, or am I simply uncomfortable? If the answer is discomfort, stay a little longer. Give yourself another 10 minutes, 10 minutes of focused work, 10 more minutes of training, 10 more minutes of reading, 10 more minutes of solving the problem in front of you. You are not promising yourself that you must suffer indefinitely. You are simply refusing to let a temporary feeling make the decision for you. This practice matters because every time you stay through a difficult moment, you collect evidence about yourself. You discover that discomfort rises and falls. You discover that frustration can be survived. You discover that the urge to quit is not always permanent. And slowly, something changes. The next time difficulty arrives, you remember the last time you stayed. That memory becomes strength. This is how resilience is built, not through grand speeches or dramatic challenges, but through small moments when you could have walked away and chose to remain. There will be days when you feel powerful and focused. Take advantage of those days. Work hard, build momentum, but don't measure your discipline by what you accomplish when everything is going well. Measure it by what you do when the excitement disappears, when the goal feels far away. Continue. When the work becomes boring, continue. When nobody notices your effort, continue. When progress is slower than expected, continue. And when you genuinely need to rest, rest without guilt, then return. Your objective is not to become someone who never wants to quit. That person does not exist. Your objective is to become someone who can feel the desire to quit without automatically turning it into a decision. Remember the lesson from the previous chapter. You learned to begin before your mind could talk you out of starting. Now you are learning the next skill. Stay after your mind tells you to leave, because beginning proves that you can take action, but staying proves that you can endure. And endurance is where ordinary effort begins to turn into extraordinary discipline. Chapter 3. Make discipline your default setting. Starting when you don't feel ready is a victory. Staying when the work becomes uncomfortable is another. But there is a deeper challenge waiting beyond both of them. Doing it again tomorrow. One difficult day can be powered by emotion. A second day can be carried by momentum. But when you continue for weeks and months, something else becomes necessary. You need discipline. Discipline is often misunderstood. People imagine it as an endless supply of willpower, as if disciplined people wake up every morning eager to do everything they promised themselves they would do. The reality is much less dramatic. Discipline is simply the ability to follow through on an important decision after the emotion that inspired it has disappeared. You decide what matters and then you act accordingly. That sounds simple. Living it is not. Your mind will always offer alternatives. You plan to exercise, but you're tired. You plan to study, but you're distracted. You plan to work on your business, but checking your phone feels easier. None of these temptations are unusual. They are part of being human. The difference is what happens next. If you repeatedly allow temporary feelings to override long-term decisions, you teach yourself that your commitments are optional. But if you repeatedly follow through, even in small ways, you begin building something far more valuable than motivation. You build self-trust. Every promise you keep to yourself becomes evidence. You said you would wake up early, and you did. You said you would finish the assignment, and you finished it. You said you would train 3 times this week, and you showed up. These actions may seem ordinary, but they quietly change the way you see yourself. You begin thinking, when I say I will do something, I usually do it. That belief is powerful. It creates confidence that does not depend on compliments, applause, or external approval. You don't need someone else to tell you that you're capable. Your own history begins telling you. But don't make the mistake of trying to transform your entire life overnight. That approach often creates a burst of enthusiasm followed by exhaustion. Instead, build discipline through a few clear commitments that you can repeat. Choose your daily 3. First, identify one action that moves your most important goal forward. It could be writing, studying, practicing a skill, making a business decision, or completing meaningful work. Second, choose one action that strengthens your body or mind. Exercise, walking, reading, meditation, or learning can serve this purpose. Third, choose one thing you have been avoiding, then complete them. Not perfectly, not dramatically, consistently. The point is to create a daily pattern of follow-through. You are training yourself to act on decisions rather than constantly renegotiate them. Of course, discipline does not mean forcing yourself to work every minute of every day. Rest is part of performance. Recovery is not weakness. A disciplined person knows when to push and when to recharge. The real question is not, can I work harder today? It is, can I keep doing what matters after the excitement is gone? That is the standard that changes lives. Start small enough that you can repeat it, then repeat it long enough that it becomes familiar. Eventually, what once required a major internal battle becomes something you simply do. But there is another problem you will soon discover. Even a disciplined person can waste an entire day. You can have good intentions, a solid routine, and plenty of time, yet still accomplish very little if your attention is constantly being pulled in different directions. You cannot consistently do hard things while giving your best attention to everything that demands it. So your next challenge is not to work harder. It is to take control of where your mind goes. Because discipline tells you to show up, but attention determines what happens once you arrive. Chapter 4. Take back control of your attention. You can have a clear goal, a strong routine, and genuine discipline, yet still struggle to make meaningful progress. The reason is simple. Your attention is constantly being divided. You sit down to work, and your phone lights up. You check one message. A few minutes later, you open another app. Then you remember something unrelated and search for it. Before long, an hour has passed, and the important task is still sitting exactly where you left it. The problem isn't always laziness. Sometimes it's fragmentation. Modern life has created an environment where distraction is almost effortless. Entertainment is available instantly. Information never stops arriving. Every notification creates another invitation to look away from what you were doing. If you allow everything to interrupt you, you eventually lose the ability to stay with anything difficult, and that ability is valuable. Anything meaningful requires sustained attention. Learning a complicated skill requires it. Building a business requires it. Writing a book requires it. Solving difficult problems requires it. Even having a serious conversation requires you to remain mentally present. Elite minds understand that attention is not an unlimited resource. They don't treat every message, notification, headline, or request as equally important. They make deliberate decisions about what deserves access to their minds. You need to do the same. Start by identifying the activity that deserves your best attention. Don't choose 10 things, choose one. Then create a period of protected focus. Put your phone somewhere you cannot casually reach it. Close the unnecessary tabs. Silence the notifications. Tell people, when possible, that you need uninterrupted time. Then give the task your full attention for a defined period. Start with 30 minutes. 30 minutes may not sound impressive, but it is long enough to reveal how often your mind tries to escape. You may suddenly want to check something. You may remember an unrelated task. You may feel the urge to reach for your phone. Notice the impulse. Don't obey it. Return to the work. That moment of returning is part of the training. Focus isn't the absence of distraction. Your mind will wander. The skill is noticing that it wandered and bringing it back. Do this repeatedly, and your attention becomes stronger. You can also begin practicing a simple rule. Finish one meaningful task before rewarding yourself with easy stimulation. Don't start the morning by giving your freshest attention to your phone. Don't spend your best mental energy consuming other people's lives while your own priorities wait. Create before you consume. Think before you scroll. Work before you escape. This doesn't mean entertainment is bad. It means entertainment should be something you choose, not something that automatically controls your attention. There is another reason this matters. When you remove distractions, you are forced to face the task itself. Sometimes that task feels boring. Sometimes it feels overwhelming. Sometimes it reminds you that you are not as skilled as you want to be. And this is where many people become distracted again. They aren't always running from the phone. Sometimes they are running from the possibility of failure. The moment the work becomes uncomfortable, distraction offers an easy exit. Instead of confronting the difficult problem, you check your messages. Instead of finishing the report, you watch another video. Instead of practicing the skill, you tell yourself you need more information. Don't fall into that trap. When your attention is protected, you finally have the opportunity to discover what you are capable of. Give yourself uninterrupted time to struggle with something meaningful. Stay with the problem. Let yourself be confused. Try again. Think deeper. Your mind becomes stronger when you stop escaping every moment of difficulty. Remember, discipline got you to the desk. Attention determines whether you actually do the work. So take your attention back. Protect it. Direct it. Spend it carefully. Because whatever repeatedly captures your attention will eventually shape your life. Chapter 5. Start badly, improve relentlessly. Once you learn to control your attention, something interesting happens. The distractions become quieter, and you are finally left alone with the work itself. This is where another obstacle often appears. You realize you are not very good at it yet. The first attempt feels awkward. The writing isn't as strong as you imagined. The presentation doesn't sound confident. The workout is harder than expected. The new skill seems confusing. You look at people who are already successful and wonder why your own efforts seem so far behind. Then your mind offers another escape. Maybe you need more preparation. Maybe you should learn a little more first. Maybe you should wait until you can do it properly. This is how perfectionism quietly becomes procrastination. You tell yourself that you're pursuing excellence, but underneath the polished explanation is often a simple fear. You don't want to be seen struggling, but everyone who becomes excellent begins somewhere they are not excellent. Nobody starts with mastery. Every capable person you admire once produced work that was clumsy, incomplete, or disappointing. The difference is that they continued long enough to improve. So give yourself permission to be a beginner. Write the rough version. Make the first attempt. Ask the basic question. Walk into the gym without knowing exactly what you're doing. Publish the imperfect project. Have the difficult conversation even if your words aren't perfectly rehearsed. You don't need to be impressive at the beginning. You need to be willing to begin. A useful rule is this: make your first version quickly, then make your next version better. The first attempt is not supposed to prove how talented you are. It is supposed to show you where you need to improve. This changes the entire way you approach difficult goals. Instead of asking, "Can I do this perfectly?" ask, "What can I learn from doing this once?" That question removes enormous pressure. Your first attempt becomes an experiment. Your second attempt becomes an adjustment. Your third becomes a refinement. Eventually, repetition turns uncertainty into competence. But improvement requires honesty. You cannot grow if you protect yourself from every uncomfortable truth about your performance. After completing something, take a moment to review it without attacking yourself. Ask 3 questions. What worked? What didn't? What will I change next time? Keep the answers practical. If your presentation was unclear, improve the structure. If your workout was too difficult, adjust the plan. If your business idea failed, examine the assumptions. If your writing was weak, study what needs to become stronger. Don't turn feedback into an insult against your identity. A mistake is something you made. It is not who you are. This distinction matters because perfectionism often makes people emotionally attached to being right. If they believe every mistake proves they are incapable, they will avoid situations where mistakes are possible. Elite minds choose differently. They would rather be temporarily embarrassed while learning than permanently comfortable while remaining the same. That requires courage. You must be willing to look inexperienced before you become experienced. You must be willing to create something ordinary before you create something exceptional. You must be willing to fail publicly, privately, repeatedly, and honestly. And when you fail, you must resist the temptation to make the failure mean more than it actually does. Failure is information. Use it, study it, adjust your approach, then return to the work. Because progress rarely happens in a straight line. Some attempts will move you forward, others will teach you what not to do. A few may feel like complete disasters. Keep going anyway. Your responsibility is not to guarantee success on your first attempt. Your responsibility is to become better at the attempt. That is how skill is built. That is how confidence becomes real. And that is how you eventually reach a point where the things that once felt impossible become ordinary. But there is a harder test waiting ahead. Eventually, you will put in your best effort and still fail. The plan will break. The result will disappoint you. The answer will be no. And when that happens, you will have to decide whether failure is the end of your story or simply the next lesson you needed to learn. The strongest minds don't avoid failure. They learn how to use it. Chapter 6. Turn failure into your next advantage. Eventually, the day arrives when effort is not enough. You prepared, but the result was disappointing. You worked hard, but someone else was chosen. You launched the idea, and nobody responded. You trained for weeks and still didn't perform the way you expected. You finally took the risk you had been avoiding, only to discover that it didn't work. This is where your relationship with failure becomes important. Anyone can feel confident when things are going well. The real test begins when reality refuses to cooperate with your plans. Your first instinct may be to take the failure personally. You may start questioning your ability, your intelligence, or even your worth. One disappointing result can quickly become a much larger story in your head. I failed becomes I'm not good enough. Then that becomes maybe I was never capable of doing this. Stop there. A result is not an identity. You can fail at something without becoming a failure. You can make a poor decision without becoming a foolish person. You can lose an opportunity without losing your potential. The most useful thing you can do after failure is separate what happened from what you believe it means. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" ask, "What exactly went wrong?" That question changes everything. Maybe you underestimated the amount of preparation required. Maybe your strategy was flawed. Maybe you ignored an important detail. Maybe your timing was poor. Maybe you made a mistake that can be corrected. Or maybe you did many things correctly and still encountered circumstances you could not control. Your job is to find the truth. Not the most comfortable explanation, not the most dramatic explanation. The truth. After a setback, take a few minutes and conduct a private review. Ask yourself 4 questions. What happened? What part of the outcome was within my control? What did this experience teach me? What will I do differently next time? Write down the answers if necessary. Turn emotion into information. This process does not make failure painless. It makes failure useful. That distinction matters. Some people fail and immediately look for someone to blame. Others fail and disappear. They stop trying because quitting protects them from experiencing the same disappointment again. But avoiding another failure also means avoiding another opportunity to improve. Elite minds understand that failure is often the tuition paid for competence. The first attempt teaches you what preparation cannot. The failed business teaches you what customers actually want. The rejected application teaches you where you need to improve. The difficult conversation teaches you how to communicate more clearly. The missed goal reveals weaknesses that success might have hidden. If you are willing to examine the experience honestly, failure becomes a teacher that never leaves you empty-handed. But there is one rule you must remember. Do not stay away from the work for too long. After you learn the lesson, return. You don't have to return with the same strategy. Change it, improve it, start smaller if necessary. Ask for help, get better information, try again from a different angle, but return. The longer you remain disconnected from your goal, the easier it becomes to create a new identity around quitting. One bad result becomes one bad week. One bad week becomes a month. Eventually, you aren't recovering from the original failure anymore. You are recovering from the habit of avoiding the possibility of failure. Don't let that happen. Give yourself permission to be disappointed. Feel the frustration. Take a breath. Step back if you need perspective. Then get back to work. You are not trying to build a life where nothing goes wrong. That life does not exist. You are building the ability to respond intelligently when things do go wrong. That is real resilience. It is not pretending that failure doesn't hurt. It is refusing to let pain make your decisions for you. Remember what you have already learned. You started despite hesitation. You stayed when discomfort appeared. You built discipline. You protected your attention. You allowed yourself to be imperfect. Now add another skill. Learn to lose without surrendering. Learn to fall without staying down. Learn to examine failure without becoming consumed by it. Because the person who can turn disappointment into information possesses an advantage that cannot easily be taken away. And once you stop fearing failure so much, you become willing to attempt things that once seemed too risky. That is when your world begins to expand. But resilience has a limit when you are constantly fighting the same battles with the same habits. If you want to keep moving forward, you need more than determination. You need to build a life that makes the right actions easier to repeat. That is the next step. Chapter 7. Build a life that makes discipline easier. By now, you have learned how to begin before you feel ready. You have practiced staying when discomfort appears, protecting your attention, accepting imperfect attempts, and recovering when things don't go your way. You have discovered that discipline is possible even on difficult days, but there is a problem. If you have to fight the same battle every single day, eventually you will get tired. Imagine trying to eat well while keeping your kitchen filled with food you constantly struggle to resist. Imagine trying to focus while your phone is always within reach and every notification is turned on. Imagine trying to read, learn, or build something meaningful while your evenings are designed around endless entertainment. You can succeed for a while through sheer willpower. But why make the battle harder than it needs to be? One of the smartest things you can do is change the conditions surrounding your behavior. Instead of asking, how can I become stronger at resisting this temptation? Sometimes ask a better question. How can I make the temptation less available in the first place? That shift can change everything. If your phone constantly interrupts your concentration, move it out of reach before you begin. If you waste your mornings deciding what to do, plan the first important task the night before. If you keep postponing exercise because getting started feels complicated, prepare your clothes and equipment in advance. The goal is simple. Reduce the number of unnecessary decisions between you and the person you want to become. Your environment is quietly influencing you all the time. The objects around you, the people you spend time with, the information you consume, and the routines you repeat all send signals about what is normal. If you want to read more, keep a book where you naturally spend time. If you want to exercise, make the first step obvious. If you want to focus, create a space associated with focused work. If you want to stop wasting time online, make access less convenient. Small changes can create surprisingly large differences because behavior is often shaped by friction. Make a good habit easier to start. Make a bad habit harder to continue. You don't need to redesign your entire life overnight. Start with one area where you repeatedly lose control. Look at what happens immediately before the behavior. What triggers it? What makes it easy? What makes the better choice difficult? Then change one part of the environment. This is not about creating a perfect life where temptation disappears. It is about being intelligent enough to stop putting unnecessary obstacles in your own way. There is another powerful advantage to building systems. You can make decisions before your emotions become involved. Suppose you decide in the evening that tomorrow morning you will spend the first hour working on your most important project. When morning arrives, the decision has already been made. You don't need to debate. You don't need to ask yourself what you feel like doing. You simply follow the plan. This is why routines are so valuable. They reduce the number of moments when your weaker impulses get to vote. But don't confuse a system with a prison. Your routine should support your life, not control every minute of it. Leave room for unexpected events, rest, relationships, and recovery. A strong system is flexible enough to survive real life. The goal is not to create a schedule that looks impressive. The goal is to create a structure that helps you consistently do what matters. So take action today. Choose one habit you want to strengthen and one distraction you want to weaken. Make the good habit easier. Make the distraction harder. Prepare tomorrow before today ends. Then repeat. Eventually, you will notice something important. You won't need to fight yourself as often. The right action will become more familiar. The wrong action will require more effort, and that is when discipline begins to evolve. You are no longer depending entirely on willpower. You are building a life that quietly supports your better decisions. But there is still a deeper question. What happens when your environment is perfect, your routine is strong, and nobody is watching? That is where your real standards are revealed. Because eventually, you must decide not only what you want to accomplish, but what kind of person you are willing to become. Chapter 8. Set standards. You refuse to break. There is a point in personal growth when you have to stop asking what you want and start deciding what you will no longer tolerate from yourself. Goals tell you where you want to go. Standards determine how you behave on the way there. A goal says, I want to become healthier. A standard says, I don't ignore my health for weeks at a time. A goal says, I want to become successful. A standard says, I do meaningful work even when nobody is impressed. A goal says, I want to become disciplined. A standard says, when I give myself a clear commitment, I make a serious effort to keep it. This distinction matters because goals can be exciting at the beginning, but standards guide you after the excitement disappears. You may have already experienced this. You set an ambitious goal, felt inspired for a few days, and then returned to your old habits. The problem wasn't necessarily the goal. The problem was that your daily behavior never changed enough to support it. Elite minds don't leave their behavior entirely up to how they feel. They create personal rules that make certain decisions easier. They decide in advance what they are willing to accept and what they are not. That doesn't mean becoming rigid or punishing yourself for every mistake. It means establishing a few principles that keep you moving in the right direction. For example, you might decide that you don't allow one missed workout to become two. You don't let one unproductive morning ruin the entire day. You don't abandon an important project simply because the first attempt failed. You don't spend your best hours mindlessly consuming information while your own priorities remain untouched. These are standards. They become boundaries between the person you are becoming and the habits you are leaving behind. The key is to choose standards that are demanding enough to matter but realistic enough to maintain. Don't create 20 rules you will forget in a week. Choose 3 or 4 that genuinely change your behavior. Write them down. Read them when you are tempted to make an exception. Then practice them in ordinary situations. Your standards are not proven when everything is going well. They are proven when keeping them becomes inconvenient. Anyone can be patient when nothing is going wrong. Anyone can be disciplined when motivation is high. Anyone can stay focused when the work is easy. The real test arrives when you are tired, disappointed, busy, or frustrated. That is when your standards have to speak louder than your mood. Suppose you planned to complete an important task, but the day became chaotic. You have 2 choices. You can declare the entire day ruined and give up, or you can adjust the plan and complete a smaller version of the task. A strong standard might be, I don't need a perfect day, but I refuse to completely abandon what matters. That kind of thinking creates resilience without demanding perfection. You should also understand that standards can evolve. The standard that challenges you today may become normal 6 months from now. Once something becomes part of your routine, you can raise the level gradually. Perhaps you begin by reading 10 pages a day. Later, you increase the time you spend learning. You start exercising twice a week, then build toward a more consistent schedule. You begin with 30 minutes of focused work and eventually develop the ability to concentrate for much longer. The point is not to constantly demand more from yourself. The point is to become more capable over time. So take a moment and create your own personal code. Write down the behaviors that represent the person you want to become. Maybe yours includes, I finish what I start whenever I reasonably can. I return quickly after I fall off track. I protect my attention during important work. I don't use one bad day as an excuse to abandon the week. I do difficult things before unnecessary comfort. Choose the standards that matter to you. Then understand something important. Your standards will eventually be tested by temptation. There will always be something easier available. There will always be a reason to delay. There will always be a comfortable choice waiting nearby. The question is not whether temptation will appear. The question is whether you have already decided who you will be when it does. Set your standards before the difficult moment arrives. Then, when the moment comes, you won't have to negotiate your identity. You will simply have to live by the decision you already made, and that is how a standard becomes a character trait. But even the strongest standards face one of the hardest tests of all, continuing to work when there is no immediate reward. Because sometimes you can do everything right and still see almost nothing changing. That is when you will need to learn the discipline of trusting progress you cannot yet see. Chapter 9. Keep working. When the reward is nowhere in sight. There is a stage in every worthwhile pursuit when your effort seems to disappear into silence. You have been showing up. You have been following your routine. You have been keeping the standards you promised yourself you would keep. Yet the result you imagined is still somewhere in the distance. The body hasn't changed as quickly as you hoped. The business isn't growing fast enough. The skill still feels difficult. The savings account isn't where you want it to be. The project hasn't attracted attention, and suddenly a dangerous thought appears. Is any of this actually working? This is where patience becomes more than a virtue. It becomes a competitive advantage. Most people are comfortable working when progress is visible. When the results arrive quickly, effort feels worthwhile. When people notice the improvement, discipline feels rewarding. But what happens when nobody can see the difference? That is when many people quietly stop. They don't always make a dramatic announcement. They simply reduce the effort. One missed day becomes 2. The routine becomes less important. The standard gets lowered. Eventually, they abandon the process and convince themselves that it wasn't meant to work. Don't make that mistake. Not all progress is immediately visible. A seed does not look like a tree while it is growing underground. A person learning a difficult skill may spend months making mistakes before others notice improvement. Someone building financial stability may make responsible decisions for years before the results become impressive. The early stages can be almost invisible. That doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means you have to learn how to measure something other than the final result. Start measuring your process. Instead of asking only, "How much have I achieved?" ask, "How consistently have I done the work that creates achievement? Did you train today? Did you practice? Did you save? Did you study? Did you make the difficult call? Did you complete the important task? Did you keep your promise?" These questions bring your attention back to what you can actually control. Results are influenced by many things beyond your immediate command. Your effort matters, but so do timing, circumstances, other people's decisions, and unexpected events. Your process is where your power lives. This doesn't mean you should blindly continue something that clearly isn't working. Persistence without reflection can become stubbornness. You must still examine your results, listen to feedback, and change your strategy when necessary. But there is a crucial difference between changing your strategy and abandoning your commitment. If the approach isn't working, adjust the approach. If the plan is flawed, improve the plan. If you lack knowledge, learn. If you need help, ask. But don't confuse a slow result with a worthless effort. Sometimes the answer is not to work harder. Sometimes the answer is to work smarter. And sometimes the answer is simply to keep going long enough for your previous effort to compound. Think about any skill you respect. Nobody becomes excellent through one intense weekend. Competence is usually built through repeated exposure. You do the work, learn something, make corrections, and return. Again, and again, and again. The repetition may feel ordinary while it is happening, but ordinary repetition creates extraordinary differences over time. So when progress feels invisible, stop demanding immediate proof. Look for smaller evidence. Are you more capable than you were 6 months ago? Do you understand the process better? Are you making fewer mistakes? Are you recovering faster? Are you more disciplined than before? These are signs of progress too. Don't allow the absence of dramatic results to erase the value of daily improvement. Keep a record if you need to. Track your workouts. Save your work. Write down what you learn. Review your completed tasks at the end of each week. Sometimes you need to look backward to realize how far you've moved forward. And remember this. The people who eventually achieve remarkable results often spend long periods working before anyone believes in what they are doing. They continue without applause. They continue without certainty. They continue without guarantees. Not because they know exactly when success will arrive, but because they have decided that their next action is still worth taking. That is the mindset you need. Work when the reward is obvious. Work when the reward is delayed. Work when nobody notices. Work when you are still learning. Keep your eyes on the direction, but keep your hands on today's task, because the future is built quietly. And sometimes the greatest test of discipline is not doing difficult work. It is continuing to do meaningful work when you have no immediate evidence that it is paying off. But life will eventually interrupt even the strongest routine. Plans will fail. Unexpected problems will appear. You will lose momentum. And when that happens, your next challenge will be learning how to return without turning one difficult day into a permanent retreat. Chapter 10. Recover faster than you lose momentum. No matter how disciplined you become, life will eventually disrupt your plans. You will have a day when everything goes wrong. You will wake up late. An unexpected responsibility will consume your afternoon. You will miss the workout, skip the study session, abandon the routine, or spend hours doing everything except what you promised yourself you would do. It happens. The mistake is not losing one day. The mistake is turning one lost day into a new identity. One missed workout becomes a missed week. One unproductive morning becomes an unproductive month. One failure becomes a reason to stop trying altogether. This is how momentum disappears, not in one dramatic collapse, but through a series of small decisions to delay the return. Elite minds understand something important. Consistency does not mean never falling off track. It means becoming exceptionally good at getting back on. That is a completely different standard. You don't need to protect yourself from every setback. You need to shorten the distance between falling and returning. Think about a runner who trips during a race. The fall matters, but what matters next is whether they stay on the ground. They can lose a few seconds and still finish, but if embarrassment convinces them to walk away, the fall becomes something much larger than it needed to be. Your setbacks work the same way. A bad day is a moment. Don't turn it into a story about who you are. If you miss your morning routine, don't declare the entire day ruined. Win the afternoon. If you eat poorly at lunch, make a better choice at dinner. If you waste Monday, don't wait for next Monday to restart. If you miss one workout, return at the next opportunity. This is the principle of the 24-hour reset. When you lose your rhythm, make returning your first priority. You don't need to compensate for every mistake with extreme effort. You don't need to punish yourself. You simply need to resume the behavior that moves you forward. The faster you return, the less damage the setback can do. This also requires you to abandon an unrealistic idea about discipline, perfection. Perfect consistency is impossible because life is unpredictable. You will get sick. Plans will change. Emergencies will happen. You will occasionally make poor choices. The goal is not to eliminate every interruption. The goal is to prevent interruptions from becoming permanent. There is a useful rule you can apply. Never miss twice when you can return once. Missed one training session, return to the next. Skipped one day of reading, open the book tomorrow. Lost your focus for an afternoon, begin again that evening. The point is not to create a rigid obsession with never making mistakes. It is to stop giving small mistakes unnecessary power. You should also examine why you fell off track. Was your routine unrealistic? Did you take on too much? Did you fail to plan for difficult days? Did you allow one disappointment to affect your entire mood? Use the setback as information. Maybe your schedule needs adjustment. Maybe you need more rest. Maybe your goals are too vague. Maybe you need to remove a distraction that repeatedly pulls you away. Returning is important, but returning intelligently is even better. Don't simply restart the same system that keeps breaking. Improve it. Make the next attempt easier to sustain. Remember what you have learned throughout this journey. You have already practiced starting before motivation arrives. You have learned to stay through discomfort. You have built routines, protected your attention, accepted imperfect beginnings, learned from failure, and created standards for yourself. Now add another skill to that foundation. Learn to recover, because your ability to return may matter more than your ability to maintain a perfect streak. The strongest people are not those who never lose momentum. They are the ones who refuse to remain lost. They know that progress is rarely a straight line. There will be advances and retreats, victories and mistakes, periods of confidence and periods of doubt. But they keep returning, again and again and again. Eventually, this becomes one of the most powerful beliefs you can develop. I may fall off, but I know how to come back. That belief changes how you face difficulty. A setback becomes less frightening because you trust your ability to recover from it. But there is another challenge waiting. Sometimes the problem isn't that you lost momentum. Sometimes the problem is that you are being asked to choose between what feels good right now and what you genuinely want later. That is where your ability to delay gratification will be tested. Because the future you want is often built by the decisions you are willing to make when the easier option is sitting directly in front of you. Chapter 11. Choose the future you want over the comfort you want now. Every day you face a quiet negotiation between two versions of yourself. One version wants what feels good immediately. It wants the extra hour in bed, the easy entertainment, the unnecessary purchase, the shortcut, the quick distraction, and the comfortable decision. The other version is thinking further ahead. That version wants strength, freedom, confidence, meaningful achievement, financial stability, better health, deeper skills, and a life you can respect. The problem is that these two versions rarely want the same thing at the same moment. The choice that feels best now is often not the choice that serves you best later. This is where delayed gratification becomes a powerful form of mental strength. Delayed gratification does not mean rejecting pleasure or making life unnecessarily difficult. It means developing the ability to say, I could choose this now, but I want something more important later. That decision appears everywhere. You can spend the evening scrolling, or you can spend an hour developing a skill. You can avoid the difficult conversation, or you can address the problem before it grows. You can spend every dollar you earn, or you can save part of it for greater freedom later. You can skip today's workout, or you can invest in the body you will depend on years from now. You can choose the easy task because it feels productive, or you can tackle the difficult task that actually matters. None of these choices seem life-changing in isolation. That's precisely why they are so powerful. Your future is often shaped by decisions that feel insignificant in the moment. The challenge is that your future self cannot speak loudly. The present moment can. The temptation is immediate. The reward is visible. The consequences of your choice may be months or years away. So you need to learn how to make the invisible future feel real enough to influence today's behavior. Before making a decision, pause and ask yourself one question. Which version of me does this choice strengthen? Imagine you are about to abandon your workout. Which version are you strengthening by staying on the couch? Imagine you are about to waste another hour online. Which version are you strengthening by giving away your attention? Imagine you are about to break a promise you made to yourself. What does that decision teach your mind about your own word? These questions aren't designed to make you feel guilty. They are designed to make you conscious, because unconscious choices become habits, and habits eventually become lives. You don't need to reject every immediate pleasure. That would be unrealistic and unnecessary. Rest, entertainment, celebration, and enjoyment all have a place. The goal is not to eliminate comfort. The goal is to stop allowing comfort to make every important decision. Create a hierarchy. Know what matters most. Then learn to sacrifice the smaller reward when it stands between you and the larger one. This is especially important when progress is slow. If you are building a career, business, skill, or healthier life, there will be moments when the immediate sacrifice feels much more real than the future reward. You will work today and see little change. You will save money and still feel far from financial freedom. You will practice a skill and remain imperfect. You will choose discipline while other people appear to be having more fun. This is where many people surrender. They don't necessarily stop believing in their goal. They simply become tired of waiting for it. But patience is not passive. Patience is continuing to make intelligent choices while the result is still developing. You can strengthen this ability through small experiments. Choose one area of your life where you regularly seek immediate comfort. then deliberately postpone the reward. Finish the important task before checking entertainment. Wait before making an unnecessary purchase. Complete your workout before relaxing. Spend 30 minutes learning before opening social media. Each time you delay the impulse, you are practicing control. And every successful repetition makes the next one easier. Eventually, you begin to experience something remarkable. You stop seeing discipline as deprivation. You begin seeing it as investment. You are not saying no to yourself. You are saying yes to a future that matters more. That is the mindset of someone who understands that today's choices are creating tomorrow's circumstances. So when comfort calls, pause. When temptation appears, think beyond the moment. When the easy option is available, ask what it will cost you. Then make the choice your future self will be grateful you made. Because the life you want is rarely waiting on the other side of one enormous decision. It is being built quietly through the small choices you make when nobody is forcing you to choose wisely. And once you learn to choose the future over the impulse, you can take the next step. You can stop merely resisting difficulty and begin deliberately choosing challenges that make you stronger. Chapter 12. Train yourself to choose the harder, useful option. By now, you have learned how to begin without waiting for motivation, remain present when discomfort appears, protect your attention, recover after failure, and choose long-term rewards over immediate comfort. But there is another level of mental strength that requires a deliberate change in how you approach difficulty. Stop waiting for difficult moments to find you. Start looking for useful difficulty yourself. This does not mean making your life miserable for the sake of proving that you are tough. Pain alone does not create strength. Struggle becomes valuable when it develops a skill, strengthens your character, expands your capacity, or moves you closer to something meaningful. The goal is not to suffer more. The goal is to become capable of more. Think about the small choices you make throughout an ordinary day. You can take the stairs or the elevator. You can finish the final few minutes of your workout or stop as soon as it becomes uncomfortable. You can read a difficult book or consume something effortless. You can have the conversation you have been avoiding or continue pretending the problem doesn't exist. These decisions may seem insignificant. They are not. Every choice is a small rehearsal for the person you are becoming. When you repeatedly choose the easiest possible option, you strengthen the habit of escape. When you occasionally choose the harder, useful option, you strengthen your capacity to tolerate resistance. This is why deliberate difficulty can be so powerful. Choose challenges that are uncomfortable but constructive. Wake up when you said you would. Complete the task before reaching for entertainment. Practice the skill you still struggle with. Speak honestly when silence would be easier. Finish the final repetition with proper form. Spend time learning instead of automatically consuming. Put the phone away and sit with your own thoughts. Do something that requires patience. These actions are not impressive because they are difficult. They are valuable because they teach you that discomfort does not have to control your behavior. Start with one hard choice each day. Call it your daily resistance practice. Every morning, identify one useful action you would normally be tempted to avoid. It should be challenging enough to require effort, but not so extreme that it becomes reckless or harmful. Then do it. No dramatic announcement, no need to tell everyone. Just complete the action. Maybe you have been postponing an important email. Send it. Maybe you have been avoiding a difficult conversation. Start it. Maybe you keep saying you want to learn something new, but never practice. Give it 30 focused minutes. Maybe you constantly choose entertainment before your priorities. Reverse the order. The objective is to create evidence that you can act intentionally instead of automatically. Over time, something begins to change. You stop interpreting every uncomfortable feeling as a problem. You become less frightened by effort. You discover that boredom can be survived. You learn that awkwardness passes. You realize that uncertainty does not prevent action. You become more comfortable being uncomfortable. That is a significant shift. But be careful. Deliberate difficulty should never become an excuse for reckless behavior or unnecessary suffering. You don't need to destroy your health, ignore genuine exhaustion, or create pointless obstacles simply to feel strong. Smart toughness is selective. Choose difficulty that serves a purpose. If you need recovery, recover. If you are injured, address the injury. If your strategy is failing, change it. If you are overwhelmed because you have taken on too much, simplify. Mental toughness is not blindly pushing forward. It is knowing when to push, when to adapt, and when to stop. The purpose of this practice is to strengthen your relationship with effort. You want your first response to difficulty to become curiosity rather than panic. Instead of saying, "How can I escape this?" ask, "What can this teach me?" Instead of saying, "Why is this so hard?" ask, "What ability is this forcing me to develop?" Instead of saying, "I can't handle this," ask, "What is the next useful step?" Those questions redirect your mind from helplessness toward action, and eventually the difficult choice becomes less dramatic. You don't need to make a speech before doing it. You simply recognize what needs to happen and move. That is when something important begins to happen. You stop seeing discipline as a temporary performance and start experiencing it as part of your identity. You become the person who doesn't automatically run from resistance. You become the person who can face an uncomfortable task without making the discomfort bigger than it is. And you begin to understand a deeper truth. The strongest people are not necessarily those who have been given the easiest lives. They are often the people who have repeatedly practiced meeting difficulty with a steady response. They have trained themselves to say, "This is hard. I don't have to like it, but I can handle the next step." That mindset will carry you far. But there is one final transformation still ahead. You can practice hard things. You can build routines. You can create standards. You can learn to recover. Yet none of it becomes truly powerful until you begin to trust yourself. The ultimate goal is not simply to become someone who occasionally does difficult things. It is to become the person who does what they said they would do. That is where discipline becomes identity. And that is where your entire journey begins to come together. Chapter 13. Become the person who does what they said they would do. There is a difference between wanting to trust yourself and having evidence that you can. Many people say they want more confidence, but confidence built entirely on positive thinking is fragile. The deeper kind of confidence comes from experience. It comes from repeatedly making a commitment to yourself and then following through. That is how self-trust is built. Think about the promises you have made privately, the goals you announced only to yourself, the habits you said you would start, the projects you promised to finish, the changes you told yourself would begin tomorrow. Every time you keep one of those promises, you strengthen your relationship with yourself. Every time you repeatedly break them, something quietly weakens. This is why discipline is about more than productivity. It is about credibility. Can you trust your own word? When you decide to do something, do you believe yourself? You don't need to answer those questions with an opinion. Your behavior already provides the evidence. The good news is that self-trust can be rebuilt. You don't need to make enormous promises. In fact, making smaller commitments may be the smarter approach. Choose something specific, make it realistic, then follow through. Tell yourself you will walk for 20 minutes and walk. Tell yourself you will write one page and write it. Tell yourself you will spend 30 minutes learning and give those 30 minutes your attention. Tell yourself you will return tomorrow and return. Each completed promise becomes another piece of evidence. Eventually, you begin to think differently. You stop saying, I hope I can do this. You start saying, I know I can take the next step because I've done it before. That is real confidence. It is not loud. It does not require constant reassurance. It is quiet because it has been earned. Of course, becoming reliable does not mean you will never break a promise or make a mistake. Life changes. Circumstances shift. Sometimes a commitment that made sense yesterday no longer makes sense today. The important thing is honesty. If you cannot keep a commitment, don't quietly abandon it. Reassess it. Change it consciously. Make a new agreement with yourself. There is a difference between changing your plan and betraying your intention. A disciplined person understands both. The deeper goal is to become someone whose actions increasingly match their values. If you say health matters, your calendar should eventually show some evidence of that. If learning matters, you should spend some time learning. If your family matters, your attention should reflect it. If meaningful work matters, you should protect time for it. Your identity is not created by what you say you value. It is shaped by what you repeatedly make time for. This is why the journey through the previous chapters matters. You learn to defeat excuses, remain through discomfort, create discipline, protect attention, accept imperfect beginnings, learn from failure, design your environment, establish standards, trust delayed results, recover after setbacks, delay gratification, and deliberately practice useful difficulty. Now, all those lessons point toward one conclusion. You are becoming someone you can rely on. That is the real reward, not just a completed goal, not just a stronger body, not just a successful project. The deeper reward is knowing that when life asks something difficult of you, you don't immediately wonder whether you will run away. You have evidence that you can stay. You have evidence that you can begin again. You have evidence that you can adapt. You have evidence that you can keep your word. Protect that evidence. Build on it. Let every small commitment strengthen the person you are becoming. Because eventually, you will reach a point where discipline no longer feels like something you are trying to develop. It will feel like something you already possess. You won't need to ask whether you are capable of doing hard things. Your history will answer for you. And that is when a new identity takes shape. You become the person who shows up, the person who follows through, the person who returns, the person who can be trusted not only by others, but by yourself. But identity is never permanently finished. Every new level of life will introduce a new challenge. And the final step is learning to make difficult actions so familiar that it becomes part of your normal way of living. Chapter 14. Make doing hard things your new normal. You have reached the final chapter, but this is not the end of the journey. It is the point where everything you have learned must become part of the way you live. You began by learning to recognize excuses before they could control your actions. Then you practiced starting without waiting for motivation, staying when discomfort appeared, building discipline, protecting your attention, accepting imperfect beginnings, learning from failure, designing your environment, setting personal standards, trusting progress you could not immediately see, recovering after setbacks, choosing long-term rewards, and deliberately practicing useful difficulty. Each lesson has been preparing you for one final shift. You must stop thinking of difficult action as something you occasionally perform. Make it normal. This does not mean you should spend every day exhausting yourself. It does not mean life should become a permanent struggle. It means that when something important requires effort, you no longer treat that effort as an unusual interruption to your life. You expect it. You accept it. You handle it. That is a powerful change in identity. When a difficult project appears, you don't immediately ask how to avoid it. You ask how to approach it. When a setback arrives, you don't automatically assume everything is over. You look for the next move. When fear appears, you don't demand that it disappear before you act. You act with the fear present. When motivation disappears, you don't consider the mission cancelled. You return to the commitment. This is what it means to make hard things your new normal. The goal was never to become a person who enjoys every difficult task. You won't. Some work will always be boring. Some conversations will always be uncomfortable. Some failures will always hurt. Some goals will demand more patience than you expected. You don't have to love the difficulty. You simply have to stop letting it make your decisions. That is the transformation. Think about the person you were at the beginning of this audiobook. Perhaps you were waiting for the right moment. Perhaps you were frustrated with your lack of consistency. Perhaps you had goals you kept postponing because taking action felt harder than thinking about action. Now you know something different. You know that momentum begins with movement. You know that confidence grows through evidence. You know that discipline is strengthened through repetition. You know that failure can become information. You know that setbacks do not have to become permanent. You know that your environment can either support your goals or quietly sabotage them. And most importantly, you know that you can train yourself. You are not permanently stuck with the habits you have today. You can become more focused, more patient, more resilient, more disciplined, more reliable. But don't make the mistake of believing this transformation happens once. There will be new challenges. A bigger goal will demand a stronger version of you. A new responsibility will expose a weakness you didn't know existed. A difficult season will test everything you thought you had mastered. When that happens, remember the process. Return to the basics. Start, stay, focus, adjust, recover, return. You don't need to reinvent yourself every time life becomes difficult. You need to trust the skills you have already practiced, and then practice them again. Your life will always contain a choice between comfort and growth, between immediate relief and meaningful progress, between avoiding the difficult thing and facing it. You will not always choose perfectly. You don't have to. You only have to keep moving toward the person you want to become. So make this your new standard. When something matters, show up. When it becomes difficult, stay present. When you fail, learn. When you fall away, return. When the easy path offers temporary comfort at the expense of your future, remember what you are building, and when you find yourself standing before another difficult thing, don't immediately ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Ask a better question. What can I become by facing it? That question can change your life. Because difficulty is not always an obstacle standing between you and your future. Sometimes it is the training ground that prepares you for it. The strongest version of you is not waiting somewhere in the distance. You build that person through today's choices. One decision, one promise, one uncomfortable action, one return after failure, then another and another. Until one day you look back and realize that the things you once avoided have become part of your normal life. You don't need permission to begin again. You don't need to feel fearless. You don't need perfect conditions. You simply need to take the next step, then take another, and keep going. Because elite minds are not built by avoiding hard things. They are built by meeting them, learning from them, and returning to the work every single day. Make that your normal, and you will become very difficult to stop. Conclusion: become harder to defeat. At the beginning of this journey, the challenge seemed simple. Learn how to do difficult things more consistently. But along the way, you discovered that the real battle was never the task itself. It was the moment before the task, the moment when you could choose comfort or commitment, the moment when you could make another excuse or take one step forward, the moment when you could quit or stay a little longer. Those moments are where your character is built. You have learned that elite minds are not people who wake up every morning filled with motivation. They are people who have trained themselves to act when motivation is absent. They understand that discomfort is temporary, failure is informative, and progress is often invisible before it becomes undeniable. They don't expect every day to be easy. They expect themselves to respond. That is the difference. You will still have difficult mornings. You will still lose focus. You will still make mistakes, miss opportunities, and occasionally break promises to yourself. None of that means the journey is over. It means you are human. What matters is what happens next. Do you return? Do you learn? Do you adjust? Do you begin again? The strongest person is not the one who never falls apart. It is the person who refuses to let one bad moment decide the direction of an entire life. So take everything you've learned and turn it into action. When you hear an excuse, move before you can negotiate with it. When the work becomes uncomfortable, pause and decide whether you truly need to stop. When your attention is being pulled in every direction, take it back. When your first attempt is imperfect, improve it instead of abandoning it. When you fail, study what happened and return with a better strategy. When you lose momentum, recover quickly. When immediate comfort competes with your future, remember which one you are building. And when life places something difficult in front of you, don't automatically see it as punishment. Sometimes it is an invitation to become stronger, more capable, more patient, more disciplined, more trustworthy. You do not need to transform your entire life tomorrow. Choose one difficult thing. Do it today, then choose another tomorrow. Over time, those choices will become evidence. Evidence that you can trust yourself. Evidence that you can endure discomfort. Evidence that you can recover. Evidence that you can keep moving when the path becomes uncertain. Eventually, the question will no longer be, can I do hard things? You will already know the answer. Yes, you can. Not because life became easier, but because you became better at meeting it. So close this audiobook with one final decision. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Stop asking whether you feel ready. Stop treating difficulty as a reason to retreat. Find the next meaningful action. Take it, then take another. Because your future is not created by what you promise yourself someday. It is created by what you repeatedly do when today gives you every reason to choose something easier. Do the hard thing. Keep your word. Return when you fall, and keep going. One day, you will realize that you didn't become stronger in one dramatic moment. You became stronger every time you chose not to give up. That is how elite minds are built. That is how ordinary people become extraordinary. And that is how you become harder to defeat.